I stopped recognizing my own daughter the day she stopped calling me mama and started calling me you. Not loudly, not with anger. Just in the way her voice flattened, like she was speaking to a woman in a waiting room she didn't belong to. I remember thinking, this is how people disappear while still standing in front of you. I am 89 years old now. I have outlived the house where I raised her, the street where she learned to ride a bicycle, and the kitchen table where I once believed love was something you simply provided enough of, and it would stay. And I can tell you this: what children remember is not how much you gave them, but how often you looked at them like they were already gone. You will learn from me how a mother becomes a stranger inside her own home, and how that silence grows teeth decades later. I know this not from theory, but from the years I spent living two lives at once. The woman I was on the outside, and the mother I failed to be when no one was watching. I was 34 when I first learned how easy it is to leave a child emotionally while still feeding them every day. Back then, I called it responsibility. I had a job, a schedule, bills folded neatly in drawers. I thought presence meant being physically near. There was a room in our apartment, small, pale wallpaper, a bed pressed against the wall. That room remembers more truth about me than I ever spoke out loud. And everything that happened later started there. I didn't notice the first crack because it didn't sound like breaking. It sounded like quiet. At first, she still came to my room at night. Small feet on the wooden floor, 11:07 p.m., sometimes 11:30 if she had been waiting for me to finish ironing or answering work calls. She would stand in the doorway of that pale-walled room and ask the same thing. "Are you coming to sit with me?" And I would answer without looking up. In a minute, that minute stretched into years. I remember one Tuesday, March 12, 1986. I know the date because I wrote it later on a grocery receipt I never threw away. She was 8. She waited longer than usual that night. I found her asleep sitting upright against the doorframe, arms folded like she was trying to hold herself together. I carried her to bed. She didn't wake up. But in the morning, she didn't look at me the same way. There was something older in her eyes, something that didn't belong to an 8-year-old. I told myself children forget quickly. They don't. By the time she was 12, she stopped asking me to sit with her at all. She learned how to close doors softly, without needing to be told. That's what I remember most, not rebellion, but adaptation. At dinner, we would sit 3 chairs around a table that sounded too loud when cutlery touched it. My husband would talk about work. I would nod. She would answer questions in sentences that were getting shorter every year. Yes. No. I'm fine. The last one was always a lie, but I preferred it because it required nothing from me. There was a winter, January 1991, when she had a fever so high I remember the window fogging up like the room itself was breathing differently. I brought her soup. She didn't thank me. She just said, "You don't have to stay." I stood there holding the bowl too long. The steam burned my fingers a little. "I know," I said, and I left anyway. That was the first time I understood something I couldn't undo, but I still told myself it was temporary. That motherhood had phases. That she would come back to me later when she understood how life demands things from everyone. But what I didn't understand was that she was already learning life from me. The room stayed the same for years. Same wallpaper, same bed, same small lamp that flickered when the electricity dipped in summer storms. But the silence inside it changed. It stopped being empty. It started being full of everything I didn't say. By the time she turned 15, I stopped being part of her day and became part of her schedule. Not her life, her schedule. I noticed it in small, humiliating ways that I pretended not to notice. On Mondays at 6:40 p.m., she would eat without looking up. On Wednesdays, she came home later and didn't explain where she had been. On Fridays, she closed her bedroom door a little faster than necessary, as if even a second of openness was too expensive. There was a specific evening, September 9th, 1994. I remember because I had just bought new curtains for the kitchen. I called her name twice from the hallway. No answer. I opened her door. She was sitting on the floor, back against the bed, holding a school book open but not reading it, just staring at it like it had nothing left to offer her. "You forgot dinner," I said. She didn't look at me. I wasn't hungry. That sentence should have meant something, but I treated it like whether something that happens outside of responsibility. I left the plate on her desk anyway. It stayed there until morning, unchanged, untouched. The second scene came 3 years later, 1997. She was 18. I thought things would soften by then, like time was supposed to do its job. She was packing a small bag near that same pale-walled room. I stood in the doorway. "You're leaving early," I said. "I told you last week," she answered. "I don't remember." She finally looked at me then, not angry, not sad, just tired in a way I didn't know children could be. "That's the problem," she said quietly. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. "You always make everything so dramatic." She paused, not long, just enough. "No," she said, "you just don't notice when things end." That sentence stayed in the air longer than she did in the room. The door closed at 7:13 a.m. I remember the exact time because I looked at the clock after. And then again, and again. The third scene was the smallest, and it hurt the most. A phone call, winter, 2003, she hadn't called in weeks, sometimes months. I answered on the third ring. "Hello?" A pause, then her voice, older now, controlled. "I'm at the hospital." That was all she said at first. My body reacted before my mind did. "What happened?" Another pause, longer this time. "It's not about you," she said. That sentence hit harder than if she had screamed. I drove there without remembering the road. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and cold air that didn't belong to any season. She was sitting in a chair outside a room, hands folded tightly. No tears, just waiting. When she saw me, she stood up but didn't come closer. "I didn't call you to fix anything," she said. I nodded too quickly. "I know, but I never did." And inside that hospital hallway, I realized something I had been avoiding for almost 2 decades. She had learned how to survive me. That is not the same as loving me. The hospital room was too quiet in a way that felt intentional. Not peaceful. Controlled. Like even the machines had learned not to disturb what was already breaking. She asked me to wait outside at first. Just 5 minutes, she said. I stood in the hallway under a flickering light that made everything look slightly unfinished. People passed. A nurse asked if I needed water. I said no. My hands were shaking, but I didn't know why yet. After what felt like longer than 5 minutes, she opened the door. "Come in," she said. Her voice didn't ask anymore. It informed. I walked into the room where the smell of antiseptic mixed with something older fear that had been sitting too long in one place. There was a bed. White sheets pulled too tightly, like everything was being held in place on purpose. And a window that showed nothing worth remembering. She didn't look at me immediately. Instead, she adjusted something on the table beside her. A paper cup. A folded document. A pen that had already been used. Then she said it. "I needed you to see me here, because this is the only time you show up without an excuse." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She finally looked at me. Directly. No softness left in it. "I used to wait for you in a room like this," she said. That sentence didn't make sense at first. And then it did. I felt the air change. She wasn't talking about the hospital. She was talking about that pale-walled room. All those nights. All those doors. All those in a minutes that never arrived. My knees went weak, but I stayed standing because I didn't know what else to do with my body. "I didn't mean," I started. She cut me off immediately. "No," she said. "Don't do that." A pause. Long enough for me to hear the machines again. Then she added, quieter, "You didn't mean to leave me alone. You just did it every day." That was the moment everything inside me stopped arguing. Not loudly. Just completely. I looked at her hands. They were steady. That was the worst part. Because they shouldn't have been. They should have been mine to hold when they were small. There was a chair beside the bed. I finally sat down. And for the first time in my life as her mother, I didn't have a sentence ready. I sat in that chair too straight at first, like posture could fix time. It couldn't. The room didn't change. The light didn't soften. Even her breathing stayed the same, measured, calm, like she had learned not to expect comfort from the people who were supposed to give it. She reached for the water on the table and said something I still carry like a stone in my pocket. "I don't hate you," she said. That was worse than hate, because hate still keeps you in the story. She looked at me for a long time, then added, "I just stopped waiting." Something in me wanted to argue, to explain, to rebuild the entire life in words and call it truth. But I understood, finally, that explanations are just another way of arriving too late. I looked at that hospital room differently then. It wasn't just a place of illness. It was a mirror. And I saw all the rooms I had failed before it. I saw the pale wallpaper, the small bed, the doorframe where a child once waited at 11:07 p.m. I heard the silence I had called normal because it was convenient. And I understood something I had never learned in all my years of being a mother. Children don't need perfect mothers. They need mothers who stay emotionally in the room they are actually in, not the room they plan to enter later when life gets easier. There is no later for that. There is only the moment a child stops asking. If I could rename what I lost, I would not call it time or distance. I would call it unnoticed absence. That is the real danger. Not anger, not conflict, but the quiet disappearing of presence, while everything still looks intact from the outside. And I will tell you something I learned too late to use. When your child says, "I'm fine," 3 times in a row without looking at you, stop treating it like a sentence. Treat it like a door closing slowly. Because it is. I went back to that old room years later. After the hospital. After she moved away. After the calls became birthdays only, then only messages, then only silence that didn't even feel rude anymore, just final. The apartment had been sold, but I asked for permission to stand inside it once before it changed hands again. The new owners thought it was strange. An old woman asking to look at an empty room. They let me in anyway. The wallpaper was gone. The bed was gone, but the shape of the room was still the same. Rooms remember more than people think they do. I stood there for a long time, listening to nothing. And I realized something that came too late to repair anything, but not too late to understand. She hadn't left that room. She had just stopped entering it with me inside it. That is what emotional abandonment looks like when it is done slowly. No shouting, no breaking, just absence, repeated often enough to become normal. I placed my hand on the wall where her bed used to be. And for a second, only a second, I could almost hear it again. 11:07 p.m., small feet in the hallway, a voice asking if I was coming. But memory is cruel in one specific way. It only returns what you finally cannot change. You think motherhood is measured in what you provide. Food, clothes, safety. But I learned, standing in that empty room at 89 years old, that children do not remember the schedule. They remember whether you entered their silence or left them alone inside it. And I did not understand that until she was already gone from my life in a way no address could fix. Now when I sit by the window in my own small room, I sometimes catch myself waiting for a knock that will never come. And I think about all the times she did the same.